I don't know politically in Israel what will happen eventually. I do know that if Gantz and Eisenkot finally leave the misnamed war cabinet, hoping to bring Bibi down, there are two things that need to be addressed immediately by Bibi. And I hope that somebody who's got his ear is listening to this. Number one is the best way of bringing the government down is to simply agree to a hostage deal that essentially results in defeat for Israel. And that means any ceasefire at all, even if it's one day. I have it on very good authority that Bezalel Smotrich and Itamar Ben-Gvir of the two right-wing parties in the coalition will leave. On the other hand, unless the Haredi draft issue is resolved in a way that satisfies most people, reasonable people, unless it's resolved, that too could bring the government down. And we could maybe discuss this at a later date, but there are some very good solutions that require the Haredim to, on the one hand, accept some responsibility for national service, however it's defined, and a radical revolution to their educational system. And on the other hand, that the left understand that they are guilty of what they are accusing the Haredim of. What is that? Well, evading their civic responsibility to defend the land. A huge number of left-wing kids suddenly develop psychiatric problems right when it's time for them to be drafted. It's a shocking number. And that has to stop. My response to that is if a kid comes in with a psychiatric problem, I'll say, oh, okay, there's no problem. We accept this. You're not going to carry a gun, but you're going to be a medic. If you want to go on a battlefield without a gun, without any means of defending yourself, okay, that's what's going to happen. You have one chance now to come clean and say, you're not psychiatrically defective, okay? You're not. You made a mistake. And if you say that, then fine. Then you can get on with doing national service of some sort, just like what the Haredim are doing.
It is known essentially to all Israelis and many others as well that there's an entire industry, particularly in Ashkenazi, left-leaning secular areas, places like Tel Aviv, Herzliya, Ra'anana, etc., whereby huge numbers, perhaps 30% of the young men eligible for military service, curiously develop psychiatric problems around the age of 16 and receive all kinds of documentation to that effect, which somehow results in them not having to serve in the army
at all.
And this, by the way, reminds me of another figure that I heard just the other day, and that is that amongst the actual combat troops currently in action, or those combat troops in Israel who are available for action, there is apparently not more than 10% from said demographic group in the country. It's everybody else who's doing the fighting. There is nothing more. There is nothing more disingenuous and hypocritical on the part of secular left-wing Israelis complaining about ultra-Orthodox Haredim, that is to say, that they don't serve in the army. Because the fact is that a very large percentage of their own demographic do not serve in the army as well.
They evade their responsibilities to the country. Absolutely. And these numbers, I mean, numbers are difficult things to overlook. You can't overlook this anymore. This is why I hope that somebody will wake up and say, okay, you want to put a Haredi draft bill in? Well, let's put a Haloni draft bill in. Let's do that. Let's do that. And I have no doubt that the High Court would probably throw it out, but it would at least break the taboo of this fact that you just raised. It's enough. It's enough already. So
the fact is, it is possible, if there is a true meeting of the minds and a true will to solve the problem of the Haredi draft, it is definitely possible to come up with a system whereby a significant number of young men from the Haredi world would be able to join the army. But that would entail the army being willing to accept them as they are, which means having bases that are male only,
kosher,
super kosher,
Haredim,
where there will be no DEI woke indoctrination,
no.
and they won't expect these soldiers to fight according to woke ideologies. In other words, you want us to fight? Okay, we'll fight. We'll kill the enemy. We'll destroy the Jewish people's enemies, but we're not going to do it according to your
correct
post-Christian regressive and simply amoral system. That we are not. Now, is the army willing to do that? Frankly,
no.
I very much doubt it. I very much doubt it.
The army does,
and that's why these Haredim have a very powerful and correct point. They are correct. Even some of them would be willing. Many of them would be willing to join the army and change their lifestyle in terms of not having to be in yeshiva in order to avoid the draft, etc. Not all of them, but some of them. And as you know, I'm the last person to be opposed to the study of Torah, but the very last person, I hope. But it's also necessary to understand there is a certain sector within the Haredi world that under no circumstances will ever join the army. When they say that we would rather die than join the army, they're absolutely serious. I must relate to you what I saw some time ago on YouTube.
But that statement, Rob, is not so much an indictment of those kids, but of the army itself.
Yes.
The army of the Jewish state that are made up of a bunch of Philistines, basically.
But it's necessary to understand the ideological background and foundation to some of these statements. In other words, for example, I saw a half an hour meeting between two secular left-wing Israeli Tel Aviv types, and they went to meet a certain Haredi rabbi by the name of Harav Tzvi Friedman. I wasn't familiar with the name prior to seeing this video, but apparently he's a Talmid Muvhak, a student of and a follower of Rav Shach, and one of the heads of that group of Haredim who are completely, unequivocally, ideologically opposed to any connection with the army and the state. And when he was approached by these people, and they said, "Why? Do you not understand that you have to join the army and help fight the enemy, or something like that?" All of a sudden, these leftists discovered that we have enemies.
Right.
Before they didn't know we had enemies. Apparently, they were all busy running around to alternative Remembrance Day.
Right. Oh, don't get me started.
Ceremonies, etc., with the families of our enemies.
We have all suffered.
Yes, of course. So he said to them, "I am X number of years old." He's an old man. I don't remember his age. He said, "I have X number of children, this many grandchildren, and this many great-grandchildren. All in all, we're talking about many, many tens, all right? A huge tribe of extended family." He said, "If you told me that I had to choose right now between all of that family of mine dying today or joining the army, I would choose that they die." Those were his words.
That's an indictment of the army, though.
Okay, but I'm just telling you what he said. And now when he said it, he was meant every word. Okay, this was not
Hyperbole.
it wasn't for stage effect. It was real. It was factual. It was expressing his true, sincere view and understanding of the world. He went on to say, in our view, it's a great pity that the secular state of Israel was established. We would have been better off with the British mandate continuing down to this day. Those are his views. You don't have to like them, but those are his views. And that is the view of, I would say, probably something like 30% of the Haredi world. Now, understanding this, you must therefore understand from the outset, people from that part of the Haredi world will never join the army, and it's a waste of time to even discuss it. And no matter what you do, they will not be in the army.
My hope,
throw them in jail. You can put them up against a wall and shoot them. They won't join the army. But there's another 70%. There's another 70% of the Haredi world which is of a different mindset.
Yeah, if you offer enough incentives for that group that is willing to consider joining the rest of the country in defense of the rest of the country, and you understand that they can be a great asset to the country, perhaps imbuing the army with a greater sense of religiosity and commitment to the Torah, then it's worth making some concessions to their lifestyle, to their religious beliefs, to their culinary requirements.
It's not just their lifestyle. They are insisting on a Jewish army. That's all they want. They want a Jewish army. They don't want to have to compromise on their beliefs in order to serve in that army.
We should have a Jewish army.
Exactly. They're not asking for something so unusual or strange. To have a military system where you have men and no women, because it is a disaster on every level, morally, religiously, and militarily, to have women and men together, mingling in a military in military bases and in training. That's a total disaster. And ask anyone who knows about these things and how the levels, the demands, required from recruits in certain units, in order to allow women to compete for places in certain units, they have to lower the standards. In other words, the army is no longer there. The army does not exist to protect the Jewish people and fight the Jewish people's enemies and win. The army is an arm of
DEI policy.
The army is a woke organization, the main purpose of which is to promote woke ideology. That's what it means. That's what it comes down to.
I have said, though, that there are certain units in the army that can be single sex. I mean, if you're looking at women, for example, there are certain units in the army that can be assigned to women-only units. The American Army has experimented with this, and that has actually worked pretty well. But the American military establishment has concluded that integrating at the lowest level men and women does not work. Doesn't work. But that doesn't mean you can exclude women from the army. You just have to basically employ them in a way that doesn't demoralize the army or doesn't undermine the army's discipline and sense of focus.
It might be what you just suggested now, Jonathan, might be hypothetically possible. But I seriously doubt that in practice that is possible.
The reason why it may not be practical is because the Haredans that are running the DEI offices in the military will never let it happen.
Precisely.
They seem to be determined to simply tear apart everything that has preceded them in terms of discipline and morals and honor. They have no other alternative or objective but to tear everything down around them at whatever cost to the discipline of the army and to the effectiveness of the army. They just don't care. And it's the same thing with the protesters. They don't care. They would rather, you said the BB derangement syndrome. Well, they're suffering from the same thing in the DEI sense in the military. There's no reason why we should have a unit of gender equality on the general staff. We're fighting for our lives now, and this gender office is worried about. I can't even mention it. What they're worried about. When Eisenkot admitted that the biggest issue that he had to face when he was Ramat Kal was this issue.
Chief of Staff.
Chief of Staff. It was this issue, gender equality. Well, you know what? All the dead soldiers right now, men and women, are equal. Is that what they wanted?
We also know why some of them are dead, because the head of military intelligence, just a couple of years ago, in a major speech, discussed the major threats to Israel, and one of the first things on his list was the climate crisis. You can't make it up, but it's right there on YouTube. You can watch it.
I remember that very well, and I just shook my head.
These people are indoctrinated, brainwashed numbskulls. Well, that's the kindest way of putting it.
I just hope, if there's another election, that people, before they cast their ballot, think. We have to have a change in this country for the better. And voting in the same mental midgets that created October 7th or set the stage for October 7th, it may be our last chance right now to prevent that from reoccurring. I hope we understand that. I hope the electorate understands that and chooses wisely.